All right, if you hold metals, stocks, have a 401k or any sort of retirement savings, this video is going to be vital because the dollar is dying. I mean, we all know this, and that's going to have a massive impact on our portfolio. Now, like I said, the dollar is dying and Trump knows it, but it's part of his overall plan, which isn't great, but it is. See, right up until 1971, the dollar was backed by gold. Then they cut that backing and everyone assumed it would end in disaster. But it didn't really. It didn't matter, at least not in the short term. But that action kind of set a fuse that would only explode decades later, and that explosion seems to be coming up now. See, back then, the dollar was already strong enough to become the world's reserve currency, the money that everyone used to settle oil, but the recent conflict with Iran was the straw that broke the camel's back. Faith in the dollar is cracking. Many countries and trading partners are choosing not to use it anymore, and Trump is going to let it die. And that's because he's replacing it with metals. Not just gold and silver, by the way. Trump is buying up stakes in mining companies for all kinds of metals. And we need to talk about that because it could have a massive impact on your portfolio. We need to talk about the metals that he is buying up. In case you don't know me, my name's Nick. I've been a professional investor and unprofessional trader for 24 years. Before I start, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not an inducement to buy or sell any assets. And as always, do not take financial advice from some random dude on YouTube. Okay, so to understand what's happening right now, we need to rewind a little bit in history. August 1971, Friday the 13th, and I'm not making that date up, this is when all of this started. Richard Nixon is locked away at Camp David with a dozen advisors, and they've been there for days. They've got a big problem. See, since 1944, the world's money was pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar was pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. That was the deal. Your dollars were basically a receipt for gold sitting in a vault. But America had been spending too much money, kind of like right now, really. Vietnam, the space race, social programs, all of that stuff. The dollar was supposed to be backed by gold, but at the rate that they were printing the dollars, there was just not enough gold to back it anymore. And foreign governments were noticing this because a lot of them stored their gold in New York. France, under de Gaulle, started sending literal ships across the Atlantic to collect their gold. And Britain was doing the same thing, by the way. So everyone wanted their gold back. They wanted their metals back. By August of 1971, US gold reserves had fallen by 50%. Half of it was just gone. It had been claimed by all these countries around the world. So Nixon went on national television on a Sunday night and announced that he was temporarily suspending the dollar's convertibility to gold, temporarily. He was basically taking America off the gold standard. That temporary suspension is still in place today, 55 years later. Now think about what that actually was, though. One man changed the world's money. There was no vote, no warning. He just did it. You went to bed holding a receipt for gold. You woke up holding a useless piece of paper. Well, not true, really. But the dollar didn't collapse at the time because they found a new backing for it. In 1974, the US made a deal with Saudi Arabia. Oil would be priced and settled only in dollars. Every barrel on earth bought and sold in dollars. So if you wanted oil, and everyone wants oil, obviously, you need dollars first. So that kind of became the new backing for the US dollar. Not gold anymore, but oil. They call it the petrodollar. And it held the whole system up for 50 years. But now that too is collapsing. So the dollar needs new backing. And that backing is going back to metals, but not just gold and silver. Actually, first, let's talk about why the petrodollar is failing, because it's really important context to understand what's going on right now and what comes next. So China and Russia now trade in their own currencies. They trade oil in their own currencies. They cut out the dollar as a middleman or a middle currency. India is paying for some of its oil in rupees, and Saudi Arabia, the original petrodollar partner, is now taking Chinese yuan for some of its oil. This has been slowly creeping up for the last 20 years. It's not anything new, but everyone expected that transition to take a few more decades. But Iran, the Iran war has just accelerated this thing, which is why it feels like we're heading head first into an economic abyss, despite the SPX setting new all-time highs all the time. And then there's gold. Central banks have been buyers of gold for 16 years straight. In 2025 alone, they bought over 1,000 tons of this stuff. This is central banks all over the world from all different countries. These are the people who print the paper money. Remember that. They are dumping their own paper to stack up metal. Ask yourself why. I mean, you don't sell something that you believe in. You don't print money to buy metal if you believe in money. But not only are they selling their own money for gold, they're giving up their dollar reserves for gold. The dollar share of global reserves has gone from over 70% back in 2001 to 60% today. Now, in the past, a US president would fight this tooth and nail. The dollar being the world's reserve currency is the single biggest privilege America has ever had. But Trump, He openly says he wants a weaker dollar, says it's better for exports. I mean, it's very bad for imports, and the US imports a whole lot of stuff, but you never let facts get in the way of a good lie if you're a politician. Anyway, in 2025, the dollar had its worst year since 2017, and Trump is not defending it. So if the man in charge isn't fighting for the dollar, you have to ask, what is he actually doing? What's the game he's actually playing? And that's where this shopping list comes in. That's where the metals come in. So Trump hasn't been buying tech stocks with government money. He's not been buying Nvidia. He's been buying metals and the companies that dig them up. But they keep this stuff quiet. I mean, it happens, but the media doesn't heavily report it because they rather we don't know. That's my opinion anyway. But we have to understand what metals he's buying because it will shape the future of our portfolios. So let's start with the big one. MP Materials. They are a rare earth and magnets metals company. In July of 2025, the Pentagon, the actual Department of Defense, put $400 million into MP Materials for about a 15%, $400 million for about a 15% stake, which made the US government the single largest shareholder of that company. So the Pentagon is now the biggest owner of a metals company, which is really weird, by the way. In a historical sense, it's very weird. The US government doesn't usually buy up chunks of companies. I mean, they did back in World War II as an emergency measure, but this is the first time they've done this in decades. But the next bit is the actual crazy bit. They guaranteed a price floor of $110 per kilo for neodymium, which MP produces. It's a magnetic metal. And mind you, neodymium sells for $60 a kilo in China. So the government has promised to pay nearly double the world price, the global price. And they signed a 10-year deal to buy 100% of the magnet output, every kilo for a decade. So picture this in normal life, by the way. You walk into a shop and the owner is selling milk for like a dollar, whatever. I mean, milk is more expensive than that now, thanks to inflation. But anyway, $1. The government barges in and says, mate, I'll pay you $2 a bottle for the next 10 years and I'll take every bottle you've got. You think they've lost their minds, right? But if milk was about to become one of the most important things on the planet and they knew it, then they're not really overpaying. See, the government doesn't want to flip the metals. You don't overpay double for something you plan to flip. You overpay for something you can't afford to live without. And MP Materials is only the beginning. Then there's Vulcan Elements, another rare earth magnet maker. The government took a stake worth $670 million in 2025. More magnets. Then Lithium Americas, it's another company. They are building a giant lithium mine at Thacker Pass in Nevada. I hope I said that right. In September of 2025, the government took a 5% stake in that. Lithium is the stuff that goes into every battery. And then there's copper. I did a video on copper the other day. You should watch it, by the way. There's a company called Trilogy Metals. The government put $35.6 million into them for 10%. This is not as much, but, you know, copper is cheaper. Rare earths, magnets, lithium, and copper. Oh, and uranium. I think that might be the next big one, by the way. I think that's the next one the government's going to target. Now, here's the thing. As the petrodollar system weakens, the US appears to be pivoting towards a minerals-backed industrial strategy. By stockpiling $12 billion worth of critical materials through Project Vault and taking direct equity stakes in domestic mining operations, the US government is effectively tying dollar liquidity to physical commodity production rather than energy flows. So these price floors and procurement guarantees create a parallel commodities market insulated from Chinese manipulation. And that's the important part because China manipulates metals prices all the time. So they're trying to insulate themselves from Chinese manipulation. And this is all while anchoring government spending to tangible strategic assets, rare earths, lithium, copper, uranium, the assets that underpin electrification, defense systems, and advanced manufacturing. But this still doesn't really explain why Trump would let the dollar die. So let me explain that. And the obvious answer people jump to is a new gold-backed dollar. They want to bring back the gold standard. But I think that's old-style thinking. The gold's already sorted. America still has roughly 8,100 tons of it, about 261 million ounces sitting in Fort Knox and a few other vaults around America. That is if you believe that it's still actually there, which is up for question. Do you believe the gold is there? Anyway, let me get back to the point. Because here's the fun bit of accounting fraud that's fully legal, of course. On the Treasury's books, that gold is still valued at $42 an ounce, a price set back in 1973, and it's never been touched since. Meanwhile, the market price for gold right now is around about $4,542 an ounce. So that is a gap of over $4,500 an ounce between the fantasy price and the real one. And there's open talk in Washington about closing that gap around revaluing gold supplies up to the market price. If they did that, the government would suddenly have $1 trillion of fresh equity on the books without printing a new single dollar. They just do that by admitting that gold is worth actually what it's worth. It's a weird situation. Now, they've done this before. In 1934, Roosevelt revalued gold from $20 to $35 an ounce overnight and used a paper profit to prop up the banking system. Now, this whole revaluing of gold thing is a bit of a hot button issue in American politics right now. They're saying they'll do it, and then they're saying they won't do it. Treasury Secretary Bessent recently said they're not doing it anymore after they've been saying they are doing it. Who knows? But he's talking right now about mobilizing the asset side of the balance sheet, whatever the hell that means. But here's the point. Gold is the old game. Everyone already understands it. The real prize is different. It's the modern metals that the world physically cannot run without, that AI cannot run without, that defense cannot run without, so the military. And this comes down to a simple investing framework I've used for decades now. I learned it from my mentors. It's called demand and solution. You start with one question. What does the modern world actually need in order to operate all of the AI, the weapon systems, the cars, the electricity grids that we now have? And the answer is metal, right? Rare earths, for magnets in every motor and missile, lithium for the batteries, copper to carry the power. Then you ask the next question, who controls them right now? And the answer is China. China refines somewhere around 60 to 70% of the world's rare earth metals and dominates magnet production. How did that happen? Well, the US shut down its refineries about 30 years ago, decided it was dirty, expensive. It was somebody else's problem. China stepped in and quietly cornered the whole thing. And rebuilding what America tore down doesn't take months, it takes decades. So the last question is, what's the move? If you're a US president, if you're Trump, and you can see that the dollar is dying and China is holding the metals that the future runs on, you do exactly what China did 30 years ago. You start grabbing the metal, you start trying to corner the market. And that's what he's doing right now. And the dollar is just what he's willing to spend to do it. He'll print it, weaken it, let it slide, because to him it's just a tool right now. It's not treasure anymore. He's spending the paper to buy the real thing. The trouble is most of us are still holding that paper, sitting in cash, sitting in a savings account, holding the very thing that the man in charge is busy devaluing. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave me and you? Most people are sitting in cash, right? Actually, I have a decent amount of cash right now, to be honest, but it's only temporary. The point is, people love sitting in cash because they think it's safe. But really, it's a massive scam. We're trained from kids to put our money in the bank. Save your money in a bank like a good little drone. Then the banker invests our money or lends it out to someone else as a mortgage. Either way, they earn 4, 5, sometimes even 10%, and they give us less than 1% back. A lot of the times it's way less than 1%. We know the game. I don't need to explain this. But I prefer to see cash as a tool. I hold it to buy food, pay my bills, to buy assets that actually make me money. That's the most important part. Not to give it to the bankers to do the same thing and earn money and then pay me a pittance. Which is why if you looked at my bank account right now, you'd assume I was absolutely broke. But most people like to sit in cash that gets devalued faster than any interest you can earn on it. Since 2008, the US dollar has lost between 30 to 50% of its purchasing power, depending on how you measure it. But what hasn't lost its purchasing power? Gold. Gold is up 580% versus the dollar in the same time. Silver is up 340%. Copper, only 100%, but I think that's going to catch up soon, which is why I'm buying up some copper right now. Metals, that's my point. Metals and the companies that mine them constantly perform over the long term because they hold actual value. And now a lot more metal is being added to that list. Uranium, so much potential in uranium. Just don't buy physical uranium, please. You're going to end up on a list. That's such a dumb joke. I always make that dumb joke with uranium. We're running out of electricity. Green energy is just not going to cut it. Nuclear is clean and safe despite all the propaganda against it. I know I'm going to get hate comments about that, but it's true. Look into it. I think uranium will do well, but it's really, really high right now. It's overpriced right now. Well, not overpriced, but it's pumped too much for me to feel safe buying any more of it. But here's the actual tip. Look for companies that supply nuclear fuel to nuclear power plants. Like one I've been looking at recently, Centris, Leu. This was recommended by someone in my Discord, absolute legend. He knows a lot about this stuff. And I'm learning a lot about uranium from him. Look, I've always had some exposure to uranium, but he's a wealth of information. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if the US doesn't start purchasing some of these uranium companies, uranium fuel companies, at some point soon. Lithium Americas also, ticker is LAC. I mentioned them earlier. That's the one that US government purchased a stake in. Also worth looking at. But now let's talk about the mindset of holding metals, because that's really important. A lot of people get into metals looking for a quick flip, or they get in with leverage. That is not smart. That is not how you should look at metals. Metals are a long-term investment. You buy, you hold, you expect to eat shit some years. You will have to. You never use leverage. Never buy a chart that looks like this, by the way, that looks like the silver chart. I'm bullish on silver long-term, don't get me wrong, but buying after it's rallied 300% and it's at $120, that's crazy. You need to let it fall back down. Like, you know, it's falling back down now. This is why I say look at copper or some lithium miners or uranium pellet producers. They've not run as much yet. They likely will with time, in my personal opinion, not financial advice. For example, LAC is doing that mine in Thacker Pass, Nevada. That's what we talked about. They complete phase 1 in late 2027. Following this completion, commercial production ramps up and they're scheduled to continue throughout 2028 with actual commercial production of lithium. So I hold some of that now and I'm patiently waiting for 2028. If it dumps in the meantime, I average in more. I'm not looking to 10x from here, although that would be nice. I mean, it could do. I'm looking to put a small amount of my portfolio into lithium because I believe it's a strategic resource that both the US and China are trying to lock down. And when they do, price will likely rise, in my opinion, not financial advice. And the mines who produce the lithium, they'll benefit. Their stock is going to rise as prices of lithium rise. So that's why I want to hold it, not financial advice. And this is way better than holding a devaluing dollar that Trump literally said he wants to devalue. I mean, you have to think about it like this. Let me explain it this way. So the government is literally spending money on lithium, on rare earth metals, neodymium, soon I think uranium. If Trump's administration is literally spending money on all these metals themselves, if they are trading a devaluing, debased dollar for lithium, copper, uranium, I may as well do that too. That's how I'm thinking about it. I'll see you in the next one.